Good morning. Welcome back to Contemplative Roots and a new theme today. Bit wild out there, windy, rainy. I'm very offended because the wind blows my runner beans off their poles. They're sort of climbing up and they get blown off. And I do find that, yes, quite difficult. So, I want to talk about centering prayer, which I only discovered about 15 months ago, but somehow it just connected with where I've been going because it's an organised way of contemplative prayer. But I suspect it will always be a bit of a minority interest. For some of you, it just won't feel like prayer enough because it's more meditative than conventional prayer. But for others of you, you'll perhaps feel like the lungfish of the Permian coming out of their swamp and breathing a new air, which they're going to evolve into. If a lungfish could evolve, well, I mean, yes. Out of those first animals that got out of the water, so many more animals have evolved. And it's actually quite recent. It was sort of born in the 70s as a way of enabling people to do meditative prayer in a Christian setting, Christian ethos, with the rise of transcendental meditation and things like that, which is similar, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but there is something distinctive that the church adds. And as I said before, we in the West have lost our contemplative traditions. So it goes back to medieval mystics, the Cloud of Unknowing, John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, and further back to the Desert Fathers. So it has a strong Christian tradition, but it feels very different. So, centering prayer is delightfully simple, but deceptively simple. You spend time and you have a sacred word, and when you find yourself thinking, you very gently go back to your sacred word. So you're moving away from thinking. And this is just so wonderful to me. It's doing what I want to do, moving away from the brain, moving down to a more centered place. And the sacred word is nothing terribly sacred, it's just an ordinary word. But you choose it, or you allow God to lead you to your sacred word. Some of my sacred words have been very ordinary. The last one I used was breathing, because it didn't hook into my mind. That's the problem with a word. It may hook into your mind and cause you to think. I've now moved on to shalom, which I think I'm able to not think about, although if I were, then it would be that sense of peace and wholeness and well-being and healing that are encompassed in that word. So I'm wanting to focus on that idea, but to let go of that idea as well. When I was a teenager, I learned a bit how to do orienteering, and if you're on an area of land that you want to navigate across with a compass, perhaps a sort of flat top of a hill like Kinder Scout, where there are very few landmarks and there are deep gullies to negotiate. You set up your compass and you find something, not a sheep because sheep move, but some sort of geographical feature, a rock or something, and you aim for that. And then when you go down into the gullies and you come up the other side, you think, oh no, where am I? Oh right, yes, that's where I'm aiming at. So as you find yourself thinking, I'm thinking, you don't get cross with yourself. That's okay. We do think. You just very gently come back to your sacred word, that point that you're aiming towards. So if that's one image, let me give you another image. And that is you are travelling down a river just powered by the current. You're in a rowing boat without oars. You're lying in the bottom and you steer by thinking. And when you let go of your thoughts, you drift into the middle of the stream of the river and you're carried down the river. And when you start thinking about things, your boat drifts to the side, slows down and gets caught in the bank, and you stop. And the river is God's love, carried along by God's love. It's a mystical boat, really, because you couldn't do that. But that's what it feels like. And yeah, have a go. The best way of having a go is to use the Centering Prayer app from the Centre for Action and Contemplation. And it gives you, this is the first page, which you can set up. The vestibule really gives you either have nothing or a reminder of what it's about. And then there's an opening prayer, which you can set up. I often use scripture there. And then the music, the sound starts you off and finish you off. And I use Signal Bold too, but you can choose what you like. And then the time, they suggest 20 minutes, but I would start with a much shorter time and just see how you get on. Then a prayer at the end. And then you can set the background. I've gone for spring because it's easier to read the words with a spring background. So I will press begin and I will read you the 4 guidelines to centering prayer. 1. Choose a sacred word as the symbol of your intention to consent to God's presence and action within. Sitting comfortably with your eyes closed, settle briefly and silently introduce the sacred word as a symbol of your consent to God's action within. So obviously this, we've had that repeated twice. Consent to God's presence and action within. That's what it's about. It's being open to God, doing stuff. Don't really know what he does, but he does do stuff. I'll next time give you some suggestions of what God might be doing. When engaged with your thoughts, asterisk, return ever so gently to your sacred word. And it is just acknowledge, oh, I'm thinking, oh yeah, that was important, but I'm going to leave that be. Or maybe, oh, I just need to pray for that person and leave them be and come back to my sacred word and to the nothingness of the sacred word. At the end of your prayer period, remain in silence with your eyes closed for a couple of minutes. And the asterisk was on when engaged with your thoughts. So this was obviously an afterthought. Thoughts include bodily sensations, feelings, images, and reflections. And Thomas Keating was the bloke behind this, and you can find YouTubes of his. And he really says, let go of anything. He says, oh, what if I have a revelation from God? Just leave it be and do it later. He entertainingly says, what if you have a vision of the Blessed Virgin Mary? You should say to her, not now, dearie, I'll come back to you later. Within his Catholic tradition, that would be a big deal. So I can see we've gone 10 minutes already, so I think I probably better stop there. Centering prayer, you can Google it. No, you can search for it on apps on your iPhone if you have an iPhone or that sort of thing. Although I did find that the timer didn't work with the screen off on my iPad, so I use it on my phone, which works better. So Android on, what is it, Google Play, you can find it's a free app, no adverts. Just download it and have a play with it. And start off with 5 minutes and see how you get on. And once you've had a few goes, then I'll come back and say a bit more about it. But I think you pick up my enthusiasm.